welcome to another Stage to Sofa. Today I am joined by a fabulous South African soprano, Amanda Echalaz. Now, she rose to prominence in the international world when she represented South Africa at the Cardiff Singer of the World in 2005. And she's since been described as the Tosca of a generation and sang at many different opera houses all over the world, including Sydney Opera House, the Royal Opera House, the Metropolitan Opera, to name but a few. The gorgeous Amanda is here with me today. Thank you for joining me, Amanda.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Oh, you're so welcome. So how are you coping with this huge shift of normality that we've all been faced with?
Mm-hmm. Well, in some ways it hasn't been as hard as I was expecting it to be. I was meant to be singing La Gioconda, so I'd sort of prepared for the last year. It was a new role for me, so I was getting ready to leave just a few weeks before the travel ban came in. So it was a little bit of a shock because obviously I was geared up and ready to get into this, sink my teeth into a new role. But what I did discover is having the time at home has meant, I can learn some new roles, which is very useful, just to have the time to really prepare these roles and sing them into your body. And also, you know, when you are working from one contract to another contract, you can't really try out new technical things. And so what I found was that having this time at home, I've been able to look at things that I haven't had the courage to work on whilst I've been professionally working. And as I'm in my 40s and looking at moving into slightly different repertoire, some of which is a little heavier. So it's actually been so beneficial to have the time to work in the privacy of my home. So any bad sounds, no one's hearing it. But just to really work on my voice and my technique and have the time to safely do that in my own environment here at home. So it's not all bad.
That is so lovely and amazing that you're having that space and time to explore the roles that you really want to do. How does that feel now that you're starting to explore them and you're going into this new stage and new chapter? Is it exciting? What's happening with your voice currently right now?
Well, it's just very stimulating, firstly, to have new roles to learn because I was very fortunate in that I did sing Tosca a lot. And that's wonderful because you just add layers and layers and layers as it goes on. But at the same time, it's just so refreshing to do a role that you've never explored before. You don't have any kind of baggage with it. So you just approach it with totally fresh eyes. And so I think artistically speaking, that's very refreshing.
That's so lovely. And I'm wondering now, if I may, I'd like to take you back to your youth where you grew up in South Africa. What are your earliest memories of music or live performance? Well,
I was fortunate in that I grew up in a household where music was a part of everyday life. And not just opera, anything, you know, the Bee Gees to Echalaz, it was, but there was always music. And so I didn't grow up with the stigma that opera was something a little unusual or exotic. It was very normal for me to hear opera. My dad in particular, before bedtime every night, he would sit in his chair at the end of the house and, you know, have all the top opera hits blasting. So I was used to hearing it. And then I think, you know, it does sound very twee, but I can confess to you, I listened to The Sound of Music as a very young girl. And I was like, I knew it. Everybody walks around singing. I'm normal. And so I was obsessed with it. From that moment on, it was just, I was always singing. And then I started piano lessons, which I enjoyed. And then it just so happened, it was a sheer fluke that my first singing teacher was a very fierce, dramatic mezzo. And I was very blessed to have met her. And she instilled in me, at a very young age, that, you know, if you want this to happen, you have to be serious about it and dedicated. And if I hadn't, you know, I hadn't put the work in for my lessons, she'd say to me, don't waste your parents' money, go stand on the corner of the road and wait for them. So I think looking back, it was really great because she just instilled this work ethic in me that is useful to have.
Very much so. And I love that you had that formidable woman in your life from so early on. What an amazing teacher. Now,
Yes.
I'm wondering, you've studied so hard to get to the point that you're at today, and you spent a lot of time at Royal Northern for your bachelor and a brief period at the Royal Academy of Music. Can you talk us through how that transition from masters and undergrad into professional life, how did you find that transition, and what did you find to be the biggest obstacle?
Well, truthfully, you know, I went straight from school to college. So I was 18, my voice was young, it sounded very naive. And so, you know, college was quite a difficult period for me because rather than building up my confidence, I felt it did the opposite. But the benefit of this, and I always remember the course leader saying to me when she said, you know, you're very driven, maybe you should work a little less and expect a little less, which was not what I wanted to hear, you know. But what I'm really grateful for is that I didn't have an easy ride, because I really had to work through, is this something I want to do? And when I left college, I did not expect that I would have contracts and agents wanting me. And it was the opposite. It was more, well, how can I make a living in opera? And, you know, the college years really toughened me up. I developed a very thick skin. It was not easy, but I'm so grateful for it, because once you enter the profession, you really need that strength. It's not an easy career. Well, it wasn't for me. It's, I mean, rewarding and wonderful, but it does take a lot of dedication. And so I really feel grateful for my college years for just toughening me up and maybe making me a little more realistic. When I left college, you know, I still was young for my voice type. And so I decided, against everybody's advice, to go into chorus work. And everyone said, well, if you enter the chorus, that's it. You're never going to have a solo career. But I knew I wasn't ready. And so I auditioned for the Welsh National Opera. And I couldn't believe my luck. I got a place there. And I sang there full-time in the chorus for 2 years. And whilst I was there, I had this whole new education of actually watching it live, seeing amazing singers, seeing, you know, how they worked in rehearsals, and watching conductors. And it was, I learned so much. But at the same time, I also worked very hard on my voice. So I never went to chorus rehearsals without warming up. I still practiced my own pieces. And I gave myself a time frame. I said, I'll do this for 2 years. And then, so I ended up doing a lot of chorus. I did 2 years there, which was a wonderful period in my life, personally too. The chorus of Welsh National is a glorious place to work. Fabulous people. So it was a very happy time for me personally. And then I did Glyndebourne Chorus, which was, that's a slightly different scenario, because there you have, it's mainly consists of young soloists. Again, it was a wonderful experience. I loved it. And it gave me the time to work on my voice when I just wasn't ready for the roles that my voice wanted to sing. So, so I did that. And then what did I do after that? Oh yes, then I was, you know, it's hard getting auditions as a young singer. There's a lot of us out there. And so I struggled initially once leaving the chorus to then try and get auditions and things like that. And I did a Wagner competition, and through that I met Ludmilla Andrew. And she really helped put me in contact with the British companies that support young artists. So, for example, English Touring Opera, Holland Park Opera. And those two companies are really where I got my training. I mean, you know, you're singing 3 nights a week, you're traveling to different theaters every week, you're building the stamina, you're learning your trade, and getting an income, which for a young singer is important. So I'm extremely grateful to them. And then, you know, competitions also help with exposure. So Cardiff Singer of the World for me was just a wonderful time. And, you know, I didn't win my round, which was fine. But I guess what I'm saying is it's not always about the winning. So I didn't win my round, but through doing Cardiff, I got my first agent. And more importantly, I met Matthew Epstein. And he's been a mentor throughout my singing career and someone I'm still in touch with now. And, you know, when I was, at that point, I think I was early 20s. And he said, yeah, well, I can hear what you're singing, but that's not what you're going to be singing. You're going to sing. He listed off all the roles, and he was absolutely right.
Wow.
So, you know, I guess what I'm coming to with this is I could advise young singers about the transitional period. All I would say is don't be rigid about what you're expecting it to be, because it most likely won't be. It's just be flexible, see the opportunities when they're there, and be as prepared as you can be. That's what I would say.
I think that's fantastic advice, definitely. And you did mention briefly your time at Cardiff Singer. Can I just take you back to that moment? How did that feel when you're about to go on live television and you're stood in the wings and there's a lot of pressure on that moment? How did you cope mentally with that kind of level of competition?
Well, it's funny that you should ask that question, because that was something that always struck me about it, was that in a way, when it came to that point, because I'd never had that sort of exposure up until then, and I was very green, and when I was preparing for it, I thought, oh, I just hope that I have the nerves to get through this. And then I remember standing there, you know, you've done your makeup and the hair and the dress, so you've got your armor on. And I remember standing there and thinking, well, it's kind of odd, but I feel calm. And I'd been dreading that moment because I was worried that I would crumble. But when it came to it, it was such a buzz. And the team on Cardiff is very supportive of young singers there. They really take care of you. So by the time it came to it, I was just, let's do it. You know, at that point, I had never sung with a full orchestra like that. So just, you know, hearing this wall of sound around you was comforting and exciting, and it was exhilarating. Yeah.
I can imagine. It must have felt like a real dream. So exciting, that moment. Yeah. And I'm wondering, you've debuted since at so many amazing opera houses, and Sydney Opera House, massively, hugely famous, an incredible venue to sing at. What has been your favourite debut and why?
Oh, that's easy. So the favourite's definitely been the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden. I think because, you know, it's unusual to get such a big break, but for me, I was rehearsing with Holland Park Opera. So I was in London. And the year before, I think I'd sung Tosca at Holland Park. And the casting man, Peter Katiner from the Royal Opera House, said yes, he was interested, but he would need to hear me in a bigger space, in an indoor theatre. So I thought, okay, well, I don't know how you make that happen. So anyway, I was rehearsing the following year with Holland Park, and my phone's ringing and ringing, and I go off from rehearsing and look at my phone, and it's my agent. It's like, well, Angela Georgiou is sick. They want to know, can you go and sing this evening at the Royal Opera House? Like, yes, I can. So the fabulous wigs person from the Royal Opera House, Ron. He's a legend, and he drove me all the way to the Opera House. And I got in wigs and makeup, and they quickly took me through the production. And at 7 o'clock, they said, actually, Miss Georgiou, she's fine now. She wants to sing this evening. So I was so devastated. And then 2 nights later, they called again. And they said, Miss Georgiou's feeling ill. And I thought, how ill is she feeling? So I go over again. I'm like, please. And it happened. And it was it was definitely the most thrilling professional night of my life. And I got there, and they had bodyguards outside my dressing room with the earpieces, because Angela Georgiou insisted on wearing Grace Kelly's wedding tiara in Act 2. So you had literally like millions of worth of diamonds. And so the bodyguards followed me all around that night and then removed the jewels. But anyway, the point being, for a young singer to get that opportunity, it was a dream. And that then just opened everything else up. So that was the point.
That's
and
an
I think
incredible
it's, at
story.
that point, there's no expectation. You're going on as the cover, no one's heard of you before. It's kind of, you don't have all that baggage, so I would definitely say that was the absolute highlight. There's been a lot of other wonderful evenings, but that one was it. That was that one night that you just, to my dying day, it will stay with me.
That's so beautiful, Amanda, and what an incredible story to get to that point and then be told, actually, no, sorry, she's going back on stage. I can't imagine what must have been going through your mind, and especially then to get the call 2 days later. I'm wondering, what did that moment look like for you when you knew that this is a huge deal, it's actually happening the second time, and you're in the wings? What does that moment look like for you?
Oh, I definitely had butterflies that night. It was nerve-wracking, because again, I just thought, well, how am I going to deal with the pressure? Will I? But the truth is, once you go onto the stage, to me, it makes no difference if it's Covent Garden or it's somewhere a little less prestigious. It doesn't matter. The lights go down, you hear the music, you go into your own world, and then the nerves, they're not there, for me anyway. Once I'm on stage, I'm comfortable, I'm happy. So, and that level of concentration during a live performance, I think it takes away from the nerves, because your energy is going into what you're doing. And the nerves, and the more you do it, the less you have of all of that,
The easier it becomes. I understand that.
Yeah, so much of singing is the psychological battle with yourself and your body, where your instrument is. So I think to be a healthy singer, you do need to have a very healthy mindset.
Definitely. It's about 90% psychological, and the rest is the actual thing, as I've been told by many teachers. Now I'm wondering, is there a person in your life that's hugely influenced your career? And if so, who are they and why?
Well, I would definitely say the singing teachers I've had have been really key in helping me, because you can have the most amazing instrument, and if you don't know how to use it, you're going to land in trouble. And I think that's really what I had as a young singer. I'm not saying I had an amazing instrument. I had a good voice, but I really didn't know what I was doing technically. And, I was very fortunate. I worked with Neil Howlett, who just passed away. He was a great Verdian, Wagnerian baritone who sang with E&O a lot. And so he had a lot of experience, but he was really all about the technique. And so he sent me down the right path, and that made such a difference. It really did. And I've been, I do think for young singers too, getting the right teacher is essential. So, and I think throughout all your life, it's healthy to keep in touch with good teachers to keep you in good shape, because the voice also changes as you go along. I was also put in contact with, you know, some amazing singers. Like I worked on Butterfly with Renato Scotto, and I worked on Tosca with Catherine Malafitano, and so and also in my younger years, I worked a little with Yvonne Minton. So I think, you know, when you do, there's having good teachers, but then there's also being influenced by women who have really gone through this career and all its ups and downs, which are there, and they've come out the other end. And the one thing I would say about all of them is they're pretty fierce. I wouldn't mess with any of these ladies. So I think there's just always something to be learned by listening to the people who have been there and done it and come out the other end.
Definitely, and such amazing mentors that you've had as well as singing tutors. How incredible, such a wealth of experience. Now, what do you think personally has been the biggest obstacle that you faced to get to the point that you're currently at in your career? Because you've had a fabulously exciting career with lots of amazing performances and roles, but what would you say the biggest obstacle has been to get there?
I think really the biggest obstacle was in my younger years, which was just rebuilding my confidence and actually believing that what I had was good enough. There's still a lot of me that kind of thinks, is it a fluke? Am I going to be found out there? Actually, I'm not really such a good singer. And it's a very ordinary voice. And I think there's always that little thing at the back. And so for me, I think the obstacle was particularly, as I said earlier, leaving college, was rebuilding the confidence and finding out, why do I do this? You know, why is this important to me? Why can't I let this go? And I think in terms of young singers, you really have to ask yourself, how much do I want this? Because it's a long road of dedication. This just is a very slow building career. It takes years and years to train these tiny little chords. Then you get there, then you have the critics. Nowadays you have people recording. You're constantly judged, constantly given advice. It is a really tough career. So you need to believe that in that moment when the lights go down and you start singing, that is all worth it to you. And for me, it is.
What does that moment look like to you, Amanda, when you're on that stage and you've got there and you're about to give your soul to the audience? What does that feel like to you?
For me, it's like nothing else exists in that moment. So, you know, people say to me, oh, did you hear those sirens going past when you were singing your... No, I don't. Once I'm on stage, it's probably the only time in my life where my concentration is just so focused. And I love that. And I love just going into another world. I have a very normal life. So I enjoy being on stage and living out these big characters with lots of drama. And I've died many, many ways. I've killed many different ways. And I like that. I love all the drama on stage. Not in my home life, but on stage. But for me, it really is just, I enter another world and I love being there. So I've never taken drugs, but I imagine it's like if you took a shot of something. It's the high, you know? And that high is like, when you taste it, it's so intoxicating that you don't mind all the other stuff that comes along with it.
I can see that. Yeah, exactly. It's such an exciting moment, it sounds like, for you, and such one that you can't even describe to another person. It's so special. That's so lovely to hear. And I'm wondering now, there's been so much change over the last few months. How do you see that change affecting our industry moving forwards? And do you feel that there'll be any positive change coming back into opera?
This is the million-dollar question. I wish I had a little crystal ball, or maybe I don't. It's very hard to know what the future shall be. The only thing I would say is that opera has survived this long, and it is such a unique art form that combines all forms: music, acting, theatre, the orchestra, dance, that I believe there will always be a demand for it. And I think people will be so starved of hearing live performance, not through online, which is fine for now, but to actually the thrill of hearing live voices, live orchestras in the air will be so great. And I think we will so need it that it will be there, but it may not be in the form we know it currently. So maybe there'll be less tickets numbers sold so that, you know, you have so many spare seats beside you. I don't know how they're going to do it, but artists typically are very creative people. So I think we will find, the opera world will find a way. It just may not look how it's looked to us in the past. And I think governments are going to need to help too. I know it's different in America to England and in Europe with funding, etc. But I think it's so important that we continue to support the arts, because, you know, you have to keep feeding the soul. And I think more than ever after all of this, we are all going to need that. And in times like that, that's what artists provide. So I think that the need will be there. It's just going to be, can we find a way to make that happen? And I would say to young singers, use this time, work on all your rep and your technique. And so, because when things do reopen, you want to be in tip-top shape, get out there and set the world ablaze. So, you know, I think there will be opportunities there. So keep in good shape, and that's what I'm trying to do here. Just, you know, keep the chords going, and hopefully when things reopen, we'll all be in wonderful vocal shape, and we'll have so much to share spiritually with the world that we will just pour our souls out. So there will be a silver lining. We shall find it. That's our job.
So. Yes, exactly. Let's hope we find it very, very soon. Moving forwards. Now, Amanda, you've been so wonderful to speak to. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have come to my final question now, which is, what piece of advice would you give to an 18-year-old Amanda?
Well, make sure you want this. I've said it earlier, but you need to be sure you really want to commit to this. It would be the piece of advice. Nextly, I would say, be as prepared as you can be. You know, even in terms of things like languages. If I could go back to my younger self when I was 18 at college, really attend the language classes, because once you start rehearsing, everybody's speaking different languages in the room. It's so much quicker if you have that language ability. And I think that's something I should have worked harder on. So I would say, do your languages, get your technique as great as you can get it, but mainly, above all, trust yourself, trust your instinct, all the way through, whether you're in college or you're auditioning or you're in the next stage. You will always be given advice. You will always be criticized. It's just the nature of the beast. But trust yourself, trust your instinct, and then beyond that, hope for some lucky encounters and keep your fingers crossed. And I wish them all the very best.
Oh, thank you so much, Amanda. Honestly, that's a fabulous piece of advice. Completely. Thank you for joining me on stage.
This has been so lovely.